Hey, thanks for stopping by the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. You're listening to episode 132, and I'm your host, Susie Botello. My guest for this episode of the SBP Podcast is Shola Ajayi. She is in upstate New York right now, but she is, how should I say this? Well, in one word, she's awesome. She is the founder of an organization in Lagos in Nigeria. The organization is called You Are for Africa. She's also a filmmaker. She's an instructor in New York. And she is just going to share some stories with you, some information. We've known her since February. Well, no, not since February. I think it was actually at the very tail end of 2017. But she recorded an episode with us, episode 19, which was published in February of 2018. That's where I was going with that. I think you're going to love to listen to her. She's going to share some stories about Nollywood, about filmmaking in Lagos, and a lot of the things that she's learned about filmmaking and storytelling, share some insights on the culture and how they actually accomplish filmmaking where they are. I just wanted to share just a little bit of news right now with you because I think it's important that you realize this so that you don't get upset with me later if you miss it. The deadline for this is the regular deadline for the feature films for that competition is October 19th. So that's just coming right around the corner. If you've got a feature film, you shot it on a smartphone. Now remember, 10% of the film can be shot, and it will qualify if it was shot with any camera on a drone or with a drone camera, obviously, to capture aerial shots. So don't miss that deadline, October 19th at midnight Pacific time. That's it. I just wanted to make sure that I brought that up with you so that, again, you don't get upset if you miss it. And now let's go and let's talk to our friend Shola, shall we? Hey, I'm back. The SBP Podcast, and I have a good friend of ours here. She hasn't been here at the SBP Podcast since 2018 in February, episode 19, and she is here for episode 132.
Woo!
From Connecticut, our friend Shola Ajayi. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. Thank you for asking.
I feel like we're doing Saturday Night Live.
That was very Saturday Night Live. Very, very, very.
Yeah, it was very performative.
Thank you so much for having me, Susie. Happy to be chatting with you again.
I am truly honored to have you back on our podcast. Ajayi, I want to share with our listeners just for a minute here, at least, how we met, because I received an email from you way back then, way back in the day, and and we connected. We had a phone call. You happened to be in New York, so it made the phone call a little easier because you split your time before New York and Connecticut and Nigeria in Lagos, actually. So
yes.
Let me allow you to just sort of introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay. So I'm Shola Ajayi. I reached out to Susie because she has an amazing film festival for people that are using mobile phones, and I wanted to kind of introduce it to the community of young people and creators that I know in Lagos. So that's how we kind of met and kind of got this relationship started. So thank you so much for being such a partner in all of this. So I'm a filmmaker. I'm doing a lot of writing right now. But I work as an educator. I work at several schools and youth organizations. But I also co-run these community spaces in Lagos, and then work part-time also as a screenwriter. So I split my time between New York and Nigeria. Typically, my family's kind of scattered, so I do a lot of visiting with them as well. But New York and Lagos split like basically in half, and continue to do this work and try to make films, teach, and run these community-based organizations at the same time. So it's definitely a lot, but I love it. I do.
Yeah, and you grew up in New York, and your father was from Nigeria, right?
So I actually grew up in Miami. So I was born in Nigeria, and my parents were like, oh, she's 3 months old, let's go to the United States, and so they came to the US, they came to Miami in the 1980s, and they raised my siblings and I in Miami, and I slowly started making my way further up north as I continued to go to school. So like I went to the University of Central Florida for my first degree, and then I ended up at Boston University for my master's, and then I ended up in New York for my second master's. So that's how the journey began.
That's, yeah, I'm still, so when, I confirmed with her that she had one master, and then she says, no, I have two. It's like, no, I'll have two pancakes,
Yeah.
it's just like so awesome that you did that. And you were working, you went there to work on a film, and you had this really incredible experience there, this community experience, right?
Yeah, totally. So I went to Nigeria while I was getting my master's at Boston University, and I went to Nigeria to work on my film, my thesis film, and I ended up shooting two films, which I ended up getting penalized for. But I ended up shooting two films, and one of the films was called Champion. And it was basically a script that I had written. Another Boston University student worked with me on it. And the story was really about a young boy who suddenly stumbles upon the Tour de France. He had never seen it before. Someone had it going on the television. And he was like, I want to do that when I grow up, So this kid is trying to be a cyclist in Nigeria, and everyone, for the most part at that time, people were really focusing on football, which, soccer, right, as we know here in the West.
Football.
Soccer is the way to go as far as sports in Nigeria and many parts of West Africa. So he was an odd man out, people are like, soccer of all things, or cycling of all things, So this kid is determined to be a cyclist, and he has all these obstacles, facing him, but eventually overcomes them and is able to train for the Tour de France with a team of other Nigerians, which is still, I don't think has happened, but cycling has increased a lot since that time. We shot that film in 2007, and this is 2022, and we have tons of cyclists in Nigeria now. So who knows? Like maybe I was manifesting the Tour de France for Nigerian cyclists. Who knows? But yeah.
That might be something else you want to get into, since you like starting things.
Yeah. But I like helping other people start things too. So with that film, with Champion, I had an opportunity to work with a lot of kids in the community that we were shooting in, and a lot of community members. And that's kind of how, You Are for Africa kind of spiraled into this space for Nigerians and African people to kind of collaborate on different projects. We work with kids, we work with schools, but it's really an opportunity to kind of bridge the gap for people of African descent to connect to Africa, and collaborate and make stuff together, so yeah, it's been changing a lot, it's been evolving, but I think we're in a good place, and I'm excited about what we're doing.
I'm just sitting here thinking about, your film was called Champion, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much to that, because then you sort of championed You Are for Africa, and you were helping all the kids and everybody that was collaborating with you to feel like champions in the making of your film.
Yeah. And even like with so You Are for Africa is based in the U.S. as well, with the trying to bridge this gap. But Public Art Africa is kind of an offshoot of that. And it's basically a creative program that runs in the schools in Nigeria. So the idea is to bring things like the arts, acting, filmmaking, all these various aspects of creating into the classroom. So the students can use it as a way to not only learn to express themselves, but also to teach other people. So yeah, totally. Like you bringing up this aspect of champion being a way to champion other people, to feel empowered, I think is a good point to make. But yeah, the idea is to really empower young people. There's not enough of it happening on the continent of Africa, and we just need more of it, because these young people are so bright and so talented, and many of them don't even realize it because they're not given the space to be that, so.
And
really
storytelling is a big part of the culture there, isn't it?
It very much is. Storytelling is a huge part of our culture, in every aspect. I mean, even if you wanted to spend time on like a platform like Twitter, and you like look up like maybe you hashtag Nigeria, you'll just be amazed at like how many Nigerians are using the Twitter platform to really express themselves, to talk about their day-to-days, to joke, in despite of the challenges that are in the country. It's really amazing. So like, yeah, storytelling is a big part of our culture and has been for many, many years.
Yeah, it's a big part of places that have a big emphasis on culture as far as validating their culture and ancestry and things like that. We don't do enough of that here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For average people, we tend to put our ancestors, our grandparents and stuff in a home, and then sort of forgetting about them, which I think is like the saddest thing in the world, because it becomes this part of life where the grandparents share the stories with their grandkids, and the grandkids see them as heroes, because while they're little growing up, they don't get to see that part of them because they're starting to become grandparents,
Exactly. And like, I think sometimes we don't even think about, like, it's so wonderful to be able to have our grandparents with us, living in our homes, it's definitely, unfortunately, something that's going away, with the advance of like more technology and wanting to be a lot like the West, but I think sometimes we forget that our grandparents, our elders, are holding a piece of history that we could lose if we don't listen to them and talk to them and let them tell us these stories, But a lot of our history is documented through storytelling, and we don't record those things, unfortunately, I think it's getting better now. Like, people are making efforts to really document some of the things that have happened from the perspective of older people, especially in Nigeria. But we just need to do more of it, we need to do more documenting. But yeah.
Yeah, part of my fascination with storytelling, I don't know if I shared this with you before, but part of that had to do with, when I was little growing up, I was living in Spain. My father was American, but my mom is from Spain. And my grandmother lived with us. I guess my grandfather died while my mom was a teenager.
Got it.
And whenever we were living there, she came to live with us. And my grandmother would just be sitting there staring out the window, sort of lost in her memories, right? And I remember wanting to cheer. That was my nature. Wanting to cheer people up around me. And all I had to do was, hey, grandma, share a story with me, tell me a story. And she would just light up.
Yeah.
And I learned from that very young age how important it is and how empowering it is to not only to listen to the stories, but to express your stories, Yeah, and so
totally.
I think that's a very, very valid thing. And I think you're right. I think it's a missed opportunity, and it's happening all over the world. It's sad.
All over the world. What's great is that our grandparents are living longer, right? But even with that, I don't think we take enough advantage of the fact that this time that we have with them and the experiences that they've had, over the last 60 plus, 70 plus years. I mean, they have seen things, things that we may never see, and I think sometimes we don't. I love talking to my grandmother. We don't speak the same language. She speaks Yoruba and a specific dialect, and I can hear it, but I can't speak it. But she tells amazing stories. She talks about what life was like for her when she was a kid, and I'm like, oh, did you play games? And she's like, I was working, and I'm like, working at the age of 8? Like, what do you mean, And she just really explained how different it was, you know what I mean? And it was just so different. You couldn't even think about just being a kid, and it's just like how lucky we are, to have had the opportunity to at least have a childhood, And it's just a reminder, about what to be grateful for, and to realize how lucky we are. But yeah, she definitely saw some things. She definitely experienced some things, but she's so strong, I'm just in awe of her, completely.
Yeah, and I think it's really ends up being in the hands of the parents, right? The in between people, right?
Yeah.
That need to realize that, because it's such a tough time to raise kids as a
Totally.
parent. But and you hear parents complaining about, oh, they just don't get this, they just don't get that, or
right.
I don't have enough time to teach them this or that. But there's the grandparents, and their stories and their perspective can bring a really educational value to the kids. I feel like we're lecturing everyone.
People are like, bah.
So, all right. So let's move on to Nollywood. Why don't you share what Nollywood is, for our listeners who may not know what that is?
Yeah, I'm so surprised that so many people don't know what Nollywood is still. You know what I mean? So this is So Nollywood is an aspect of Nigeria's film industry. So it is our version of Hollywood. And just like in the U.S., it's more so on high profile, high budget projects, that are marketed to the majority of Nigerians. They tend to have the same themes and topics, unfortunately, which is really, really crazy. It almost feels like it shouldn't be Hollywood as an industry, it shouldn't be Nollywood as an industry, but more so as a genre. But they have Nollywood, they have New Nollywood, to kind of...
oh, really? Okay, so what's the difference between Nollywood and New Nollywood? I feel like I'm doing a tongue twister now.
Yeah. So with Nollywood, I think Nollywood is number 2. It's Hollywood, Nollywood, and then Bollywood, or it might be number 3. I think it fluctuates between those numbers, first, second, and third. But Nollywood is the original Nollywood were films that basically, if you really look at them, they were experiments. You know what I mean? People taking up cameras, especially because handy cams had just come out in the early 1990s. I was
gonna say
the 1990s.
Right.
So people were getting their hands on handy cams, So people were like, oh, I have this camera, let's shoot something, So some people were shooting these feature films in one day, and they were using special effects. We have our own version of Spider-Man, from back then. And you could tell
Were
that
they
people
kind of
were
like mimicking
influenced.
Hollywood movies, right?
Yes, yeah. A lot of it was mimicking early on. A lot of it was mimicking, but it started to change, as people started to get a better grasp of the film techniques and storytelling for film. That's when you start to see this change, that it starts to become our own thing. And that's kind of like where New Nollywood comes in. And New Nollywood are like films coming out like between like 2010 to now, really focusing on like production, really focusing on acting, so you kind of see like the new Nollywood films are a little glossier, and they try to stay away from a lot of the old themes of old Nollywood, so a lot of the old themes of old Nollywood were about a village girl coming to the big city, and she uses jazz to seduce her sister's husband. Do you know what I mean? So there's elements of mysticism, there's elements of drama because of these relationships and these power dynamics, but with New Nollywood, you still have the same kind of drama, but maybe we're staying away from the mysticism. Like we don't see so much. And jazz is basically like a form of voodoo, like using magic, to get what you want. So there's a lot of like husbands cheating on their wives before. And oh, you've never heard of it before?
No, I've never heard of jazz being mysticism. I remember I was infatuated with my music courses, the history of music.
Yeah.
And it involved things like, when slaves were taken to Cuba and Puerto Rico, I think it was, Santeria and the whole religion
Brazil.
stuff. Yeah, and to hide, to make it seem like it was Christianity, but it, technically wasn't, and things like that. But I never heard that part about the jazz.
Yeah, so jazz, so there's a lot of names for it, but like the common ones now that we use to describe something like voodoo, we have juju, that's Juju, and then we have jazz, so that's what that's the newer lingo to describe it. But yeah, and people very much still believe in it, it's a phenomenon. But yeah, so it's not so much the part of the storytelling of New Nollywood. New Nollywood feels more like soap operas, kind of, I guess. And it's like, there are some really great movies coming out of Nigeria, but they definitely don't fall into the New Nollywood category, I don't think.
I've been watching for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years or something now, a lot of movies on Netflix and things like that. And would those be considered Nollywood movies or new Nollywood, I should say? Or?
I guess it depends on what films you're watching. Like, Glamour Girls might be considered new Nollywood. It's very much a, like, kind of soap opera-ish film. But then, what other films?
Because I've been watching some really serious ones that tell stories that are kind of hardship situations, I'm trying to remember one. I can't remember the name right now because this happens when you're talking in the moment. But there was one about a little boy who it's a brother and a sister, and their house is basically in a village, and their mother gets killed. They get invaded, right? By the police, mafia, or whatever, that there are there. And they're running away and trying to survive and trying to come to the United States or another, I can't remember where. And then the little sister gets killed and the boy is all by himself, and he ends up sneaking into an airplane. It was such an incredible story, and the acting and everything. But the whole story takes place as this, this poor little orphaned kid who had a really happy lifestyle. It was just, how they got torn apart like that. And I just can't remember. It was the name of the little boy. and you know, it was all, you know, in captions and things like that, but it was a really great film, and I was surprised. Wow. I was like, I would give this film like an Oscar, you know.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure the people would be so happy to hear about, you know, that this was an Oscar-worthy film, you know, that came out of Nigeria, you know.
Yeah, I just can't remember the name, but there are many films like that now, more and more, and I love them because the acting is just super incredible. By the way,
yeah, I'm trying to think of what that movie might be. I don't have an idea of what that movie is, but like if I was to kind of give you an example of like a Nollywood as opposed to or a new Nollywood as opposed to like other films that are coming out, like let's see, I'm trying to think of what can I use as an example? Shola Mukalik. That's a film about a young boy whose parents send him to learn how to be a mechanic. So I wouldn't consider that like a new Nollywood film. But what I would consider a new Nollywood film would be like Glamour Girls or Sugar Rush, the Bling Lagosians. And I just think the storytelling in these films, the production value is great. The storytelling in a lot of these films are just like they're drama, but I don't know. I don't think they highlight the best sides of us. You know what I mean? So they kind of feel generic. But
I see what you mean.
Yeah, but Mukalik, I think, is really, really interesting film. It just showcases a different community of people, and in a way that's interesting. There are other films. What I'll do is that I'll just share a list of films. I'm like, oh, check this out. Oh, another one that's really good is Omo Ghetto. Really, really well done. I was really surprised by that film. And that film made me want to watch more Nigerian films. So yeah, I'll give you like a list that you can like put on your website. Another really good one is called Olo Toure. And it's basically about an undercover reporter, kind of investigating prostitution in Nigeria. Man, crazy movie.
Is that harsh or yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it just showed the realities of what a lot of women have to go through, like sex trafficking, all of that stuff, and how a lot of women are not protected, especially. I mean, it's everywhere, you know, not just Nigeria, but no one really talks about it, and it was nice to see it explored in a film. So
nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to mobile filmmaking. When in regards to mobile filmmaking, how popular is that? I mean, when we spoke, it was 2018, and you were bringing this concept with your students, I'm sure from the beginning at least, right?
Yeah. Yes, totally. And I've had several students shoot full-length films with their phones. Like, it's
and when you meant
incredible.
Full length, you mean like feature-length films?
Yeah, feature length. I mean, nice. I would say like an hour. Let me not give them the whole hour and 20, but an hour long film.
Technically, they start at 40 minutes, according to...
Nice.
But, so yeah, they've been making feature... Everybody's debating that online. 40 minutes shouldn't count, but that's the standard minimum set for what qualifies.
For mobile films?
No, for feature films in the industry.
Oh, really?
In the film industry, yeah. Yeah. So that's why in our film festival, I started at 40 minutes because, well, for one thing, yeah, that's okay with a mobile film, but that's the actual reason. But then I go to 2 hours. I mean, I can't see showing a 3-hour Lord of the Rings on a mobile film festival. But
yeah, I get that.
Yeah. But so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the mobile filmmaking that your students are doing, because that's really cool. I didn't know that they were making an hour-long film. with a
Yeah,
phone?
so basically, I think the appeal of mobile filmmaking is the access more so to film than to cameras. You know what I mean? So the students are, and that's what's great about, young people in Nigeria, especially, and I guess all over Africa and everywhere, but they're just really resourceful, so like didn't limit themselves by being, oh, I need like a red camera, to shoot this story. They used their phones to do it. They were really creative. I don't know if you've ever heard of oh my gosh, I've forgotten their names. Oh no.
Because you're catching on my virus of forgetting.
No, I was like, oh no, what is that film that Chris Hemsworth was in? Breakable or something?
Oh.
Do you know what I'm talking about? That was so popular on Netflix.
There's a lot of them, but I know which one you're talking about. It was filmed there, wasn't? Or was it filmed there?
No. I think he filmed that in oh, that's what it was. Extraction. It was Extraction. Yes. Was the film.
Yes.
So this film came out, Extraction, and these kids in Nigeria made a film about it. Like
right.
Do you remember?
Yes, it was like side to side, and they were mimicking the
called
old Nollywood style, right?
Yeah, Ikorodu boys. That's what they called themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just a perfect example of like young people like taking whatever resources they do and have and being really creative about it. So my students, they have made films about things like rape, like a lot of like PSA type films, to really kind of spread awareness about certain topics, which is really, really encouraging, and that's without my, advice, like, hey, you should do it. You know what I mean? Like this is their own choice and their own stories that they want to tell. And I think that that's really what's really powerful about being able to use your phone in that way,
Now, a lot of these films that they're doing, like, I don't know if when you were a kid, you did this or not, but we used to put on these mock plays after dinner, for our parents and, their friends and stuff.
Yeah.
After like here while you're having your coffee and dessert or whatever.
Yep.
We, the kids.
Yep. We're going to put on our own version of like Sound of Music. We used to do that in my house.
I don't know if we were that good, but
yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. Yeah. We had fun,
Yeah, and the parents loved it, and I think it was like an old. I'm trying to remember some old. I think it was like Little Rascals or something like that, like one of the oldest ones where they would put a performance in their neighborhood. And they were pretending to put on a play or something like that. But by pretending, because common. This is what we're doing in film and in theater and all that, we're literally, and it's called play, right? We're pretending. It's all pretend and make believe. So it's perfect for kids and for young people. So what I'm getting to with this is when they're showing these films, because now they have a phone, they can literally just kind of group up together and watch it on a notebook or on their phone, right?
Right.
So how are they? I don't want to say distribute. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't even think they're thinking about distribution. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. I guess that's the thing that's really interesting, and that's that's why your festival is so important. You know what I mean? Because you create platforms for them to be like, oh, I could submit my film here. So and a lot of them are not just getting it done. And that these kids are like so savvy on social media, right? So the hope is that they'll get enough likes, yeah. You could get enough likes. Maybe someone will be like, oh, I like this film you made. Come and act for me, so they use it to showcase their talents as well. Yeah. But distribution, like very few of them are thinking in that direction, and I think that that's the case for a lot of people in Nigeria, not just these kids and their mobile phones, but even people that work in film. Like, it's hard to think about like, oh, if I submit this somewhere, this could open more doors for me than trying to just quickly make a film and quickly make money off of it. You know what I mean? So we haven't gotten into, sure, there are a lot of filmmakers, that are trying to get their films seen in festivals, but the majority of filmmakers are thinking about, how do I make money off of this, so I can go and make the next one and make money off of that,
And it's a show off thing too that I didn't think about when I started this. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I just want films from everywhere. I just want to give this. It wasn't really all about the films. It was the opportunity, right?
Right.
That people from other countries have, because, when I was growing up in Spain, my little friends, right, would be like, oh, because your dad's American and you get to go and you get to, do this American thing. And, can we come to your house and eat Jell-O? Like they didn't have Jell-O, things like that. And I thought about that, like, well, I just want to, I want to open the door for them from here, right? But what I didn't think about, and somebody had to point that out, is, do you realize what it's like to be in Italy or in Africa or in Iraq or wherever, and to say my film is playing in San Diego, where they make like these big movies there, And San Diego is like such a popular city. I mean, they show it off in a lot of movies. They say, oh, in San Diego, right? Everybody knows where it is, like New York, right? And so it's kind of a big deal. And we're also literally a stone's throw away from LA, right? Hollywood. So for them, it's like when I spoke with you the first time, it's like, for sure, and if you can somehow bring them over here, to San Diego to experience the film festival in person, it would be fantastic. But then all this other stuff happened, like COVID and the pandemic.
I know. Just put a wrench in everything,
Yeah.
Stop the kind of steady the upcline, like uptick of I guess, access, It's just crazy.
So, and speaking of that, how is that affecting, the whole, everything that's happening right now with the economy, the supply issues and all of that? How's that affecting their access to filmmaking? Not only opportunities, but gear and things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for us in Nigeria is that we don't make our own stuff. So the supply issue is a big issue, what's great is that people have access to rent equipment, you know what I mean? But as far as like buying equipment, it's not that easy. And of course, because of that, because there's not an influx of equipment coming into the country, because of the stalling of creating and developing products to get to the country as far as shipping, everything else is really expensive. Like the price of things have gone up. Like the price of a charger for your batteries has gone up, let alone the cameras and the lenses, you know what I mean?
And then there's a limited supply for renting, because usually you wouldn't have 100 people trying to rent the same thing.
Exactly.
But now you do, right?
Exactly. So you have to worry about renting. You have to worry about like making sure you can get the equipment when you need it. So there's different things. Like what's great is that a lot of these productions own their own equipment, so they don't have to worry that much about renting. But then for those people that don't own their equipment, they have to worry about renting. They have to worry that the equipment doesn't break, because it's not something that you can easily just drive to Best Buy and be like, oh, hey, this broke and I need, you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
Not down the street. So yeah, COVID has affected a lot of things in Nigeria specifically.
What about shipping?
Yeah, we can't even talk about shipping.
It's bad.
Shipping overseas, hard, terrible, really hard to do. Shipping within the country, it just the unfortunate thing for us is that like if we really wanted to kind of pull ourselves out of COVID, this COVID situation, making our own stuff would have been the best thing, But because our country is a big import country, we import everything for the most part. We don't have the factories to make even toothpicks. So yeah, we lean a lot on the fact that other countries have to ship stuff to us, and other countries are behind, you know what I mean, as far as like what they can get out to people. So, and I'm very sure that like Nigeria is not a priority for some of these countries.
No, probably, unfortunately not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we talked about this before, the resourcefulness of the
and
people
that's the
there,
and that's the
because
thing. there's tons of movies that are still coming out. I mean, if you go on Google right now and type in Nollywood Netflix films, you'll see that there's movies that have come out on 2018, 2019, 2020, 21. You know what I mean? So obviously people are still making, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think
that's the cool thing too with the internet.
Yes, I guess it is the cool thing with the internet, you know. People are still able to figure it out, you know, even with the lack of access. So
yeah, it's just a matter of finding the platforms. And you know, like we just finally had our in-person film festival this last April, and we're planning, you know, next April and things like that. And you know, there's not it's not easy to put on a film festival of this type because they don't get the attention that traditional film festivals get when it comes to sponsorships and, you know, all that stuff. But it's the whole purpose of it, though, isn't about that. It's about opening the door and giving these opportunities to people globally, not just locally. And I think a lot of people miss that, you know, that, hey, we're talking about something that brings great stories and great talents and skills together in film from many different places that you wouldn't otherwise experience.
And I think that that's what's really amazing about your festival, right? Is that like you have films coming from everywhere, you know, everywhere. And you've just created a platform for people who may not have the access to like really nice cameras and really nice lights and sound equipment, you know, but are still able to put a story together that like touches and impacts people, you know. So kudos to you for putting it on every year, you know, because I know that it's not easy, you know, and, you know, getting the funding, you know, and just the respect, you know, to put on such an event, you know. But it's always great to see the pictures. It's always great to see who comes, you know. And I think that like I'm praying that more and more people stumble upon your festival, because it's amazing what the festival has been doing over these last few years, and the access that the opportunities that it's created for makers to have their film seen. Because otherwise, like, what's the point of making them if people are not seeing them? You know.
We should bring that up for a second here. Speaking of getting your film seen, you know who's going to see the short films? Shola. She's going to be one of the judges for the second time.
Yes, for a second time. I enjoyed watching the films the last time, you know. There's some
talking
really
about
great
someone
projects.
with 2 degrees, 2 masters, 2 everything, 2 brains and intelligence and great talent and skill for the film industry, who gets to watch your films.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Really, really exciting. Some talented people in the world, man.
Including
just
you,
need the opportunities.
For sure.
Yeah, and you too, Susie.
Well, while I'm ahead here, I wanted to also just have, you know, you were talking about how you were talking about, you know, the mobile filmmaking there. How big is the attraction to mobile filmmaking, do you think, in the entire region in Africa?
Oh, that is hard to say, especially because Nigeria is so big. Nigeria is so big. But I did want to tell you that one of the filmmakers I've worked with, I've written for him. He made a film that did very well at film festivals on his phone. It's called Tokumbo. So I'll share the link with you. I think you're going to love it. It is such a powerful film. And it looks great. And I wish that like I knew him so that when he was making this, so I could be like, hey, submit to Susie's Film Festival. You know what I mean?
Oh, he still can.
He still can, even with, you know, it's been a few years since the film was made.
I don't care. I
you
mean,
don't
look,
care?
here's the value
I can even
of
connect
this.
You guys.
Yeah, here's the value of it. It's one, it's a story, and 2, if it was shot with a phone, as long as everything else qualifies.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can't imagine why wouldn't be allowed? As a matter of fact, we've had filmmakers, come. I remember this guy in Australia, Brian Hennings. He came one year, right? And he didn't win, but he made a pretty good film. The second year, he made sure that he made it and that he submitted it. And then he came to the film festival. The second year, right? Mm-hmm. He wins.
Oh, that's
he
awesome.
Totally wins. And he was
such a great story.
Yes. And so I tell people, if you win, because I have no hand in it, right. It's all you guys, the judges. So if the judges say you win and they don't know, you know what I mean? And
yeah, totally.
It's all about, the film. For me, it's more about the filmmaker. You know what I'm saying?
It's about you.
Yeah, because you don't just, as a filmmaker, you don't just make one.
Right.
And I want to be a part of that growth, like with this other guy, he made such a much better film, the second time. And that's happened with many mobile filmmakers. A lot of filmmakers who are making movies with a phone jump in, it's like jumping into the water, not to swim with sharks, but they jump into the water without knowing how to swim really. And they create some pretty decent films. They're just not good enough, but they're good enough to participate. And you don't want to kill that spark. You really don't, because
it's supposed to be inspired, right?
Yes. And so you encourage them, and you tell them all the great things and all these things. And then they go out and they make another one and they learn so much from the first one. And the third time they learn so much from the second time. And it's not like they have to gather, $20,000 to make a film. Mm-hmm. And then they go out and they make an incredible film, and you're going, yeah, because they were inspired. And they weren't only inspired because I told them it was good and they have the talent. They're inspired because they inspire themselves. A lot of people don't realize you can inspire yourself.
Right.
And with filmmaking, that's the thing to do. You're constantly learning, and then you do that. And yeah, it's that combination of the quality of your film, the audio too. Guys, I always emphasize that. Hey, I have a question. I was thinking about this the other day. So I was thinking about how we're constantly looking for, the better microphones and things like that for video. And I was thinking, you know what? I need to rethink this. I went all out looking for a way to connect a microphone way back in the day. XLR shotgun mic onto my little iPhone, right? And I spent so much time doing that. And then, and everybody else keeps, talking about that. But when you're doing video production, you do that, you connect, you don't use external audio recording gear to create the sound, because you're not layering it upon layer and sound effects and all those things. You're just, you're recording an interview and B-roll and, maybe a narrator later or whatever, but you're not really doing that. With film, though, when you're making films, I think what I want to share, I wanted to get your input for our listeners. Forget it. Just think about external recording, right? Mm-hmm. Because that way, because you've made a film too, that way you have the best audio recording you can get.
Possible,
so if there's one person that you should have on your team for sure is a good sound mixer, right?
Totally. I mean, even like if you can use two phones, use one phone for, your video recording, and then the second phone for like audio, and get mics hooked up to it and all that great stuff,
Yeah, I mean that's creative, option. But I think if you go out and buy, like an HN6 or an HM4 or whatever, the Zoom recorders, right. Even if you get something like that and you hook up a nice XLR microphone to it, right? Like a shotgun mic or whatever, you're going to get better sound than you can with fiddling around looking for, because a lot of newer microphones that are made for the phone, they still don't have that quality audio that you need you know, to get that file for your video editor. To put out cinematic, you know what I'm saying?
Audio equipment. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, because I mean, I get it for video production. I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
Yes, you can use another phone, you can use a lav, you can use just about anything. You can tweak it.
Exactly. And I'm just thinking, like, it's those recorders are, I mean, yes, if they're producing a project, like in a place like in the States, for example, a Zoom mic or a Zoom recorder or a Tascam would probably be like the best bet, right? But no one's really using recorders like that over there in Nigeria. I don't think I've seen a Tascam. Have I seen it on any productions, you know?
And they're really not that expensive.
Yeah, they're pretty. They're
cheaper
pretty
than a
decent,
phone.
Powerful little devices, you know. But people have like 2 or 3 phones.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Yeah. I mean,
People
we're
have 2 or 3
talking about
phones
the
over there.
difference between making films and making and getting creative to make a film, right?
Yeah.
To
Totally.
show your talent and skill. But I just think a lot of from my perspective, probably yours too as a judge. I just think that's something to remember, how good the audio is, because I've seen films that have great visuals, you know, and the quality of their video is great, but then the audio just broke them. You know, it's like, and people are really not forgiving to that. And I've had I rarely see the opposite happen, where they have wonderful audio, but then the video is really bad. But if they did, people are more forgiving to the video than they are to the audio.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So okay. So I kind of want to wrap this up on a good note.
It's been fun.
Yeah. So what advice would you give as a judge and as an educator in film to our listeners when it comes to making movies and turning stories into films?
Yeah, I think one of the things, because a lot of what I've been focusing on has been writing lately, and I know a lot of people are like, I hate my writing. I don't think I'm good at do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'm good with dialogue. My scenes are not strong. I don't think that people realize that, like, even like your first draft will still need work. Your second draft will still need work. And I think that people need to know that I want to encourage people to keep writing. You know what I mean? Keep writing. You know, so many people get discouraged with their first draft, you know, that they stop. It's really crazy. So to make sure that these stories get told.
I wonder why they do that.
Yeah,
why
discouraged.
do you think? I know why
you know
I do
what I
it.
mean? Yeah.
Because
not believing in yourself, you know.
Well, the mistake I always make is I don't have some sort of an outline first. I just start writing.
Okay, when you write, yeah.
Yeah, and then I get all into it. And by the time I put so much energy into that whole, wow, I'm just going to write, you know, the story is just coming alive in my head, that if I don't finish it all in one blow, right, you know what I mean? Then it's really hard to go back and refine it, because you spent all your passion and your energy on that one first draft.
Right, yeah. And that's the thing, is that, like, that's why it's really important. Like, if you have the opportunity to join a writing group, definitely do it, because those are the people that will encourage you, you know. But my thing too is that, like, the writing process, you know, like, if you want to write, then you should be writing consistently. And it doesn't have to be a feature, you know. You could write 10 pages, you could write 5, but just write, you know. And I think that people don't give themselves a chance. You know, they get so discouraged, especially like if you write your script and you spend time on it and you're like, oh, no one wants to shoot this, or I submitted it somewhere and it didn't win. You know, it's just, you submitted it at one place and it didn't win, you know. Just imagine if you submitted it at more places, or you sat in a writer's room and they gave you feedback about, like, what you can make stronger, you know what I mean? But I think it's important for us to remember to write and also to share, you know. I know a lot of people are worried about their ideas getting stolen and so on and so forth, and rightly so, you know. So copyright your shit. Copyright it. Copyright your project. And, you know, so that you have a little bit of that protection. But, you know, the whole point of writing in the first place, the story in the first place, is for people to experience it and have the opportunity to meet these characters in this world that you've created. And if you're not sharing it, then what's the point? You know what I mean? So yeah, I want to encourage people to keep writing.
Yeah, totally get it writing. And one thing that Steven Peterson shared with us, he's a writer, but he's professional. Films on Netflix and everything. And he says, if you write with the intention of making a mobile film, that film will be made.
Nice. I like that.
Because if you think about that, you know, it's like, yeah, if I'm writing for a mobile film as opposed to like this big Nollywood film, then you have a chance of making sure that someone will make your film, maybe even you.
Right. I like that.
I love that. I've been quoting him a lot.
Oh, good.
Just because of that, because it really hit home. It's like, what a way to put it. It's so true. Don't put a plane crash into your story, because that's going to take a lot.
It costs money, you know? Yes. But I mean, even if they do, like you can do tons of stuff with like found footage and online stuff and stock footage, you know?
Well, you can show the before and after, you know, there's all this creativity, but don't write for an actual, you know, like that movie with Tom Hanks, you know, where they crashed a plane. I forgot the name of that. When he crashes on the island. Yes.
Castaway.
Castaway.
Yeah.
And that movie, Tom. That had the most incredible plane crash. I've seen another one since then, a newer film, and I can't remember what that one is. But anyways, yeah, don't do that.
Do not.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate that you did this. I also have to publicly thank you for introducing me to some of your students at the college in Ithaca.
Yeah, Ithaca College.
Ithaca. Yeah, I knew I was going to mispronounce something here today.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, that was a great experience for me, and your students were incredible, and you're a great teacher, very respectable.
You, Susie.
So
yeah, thank you, Susie. I appreciate that, and thank you for saying yes. You know, I mean, the hard part is actually getting people to come out and talk to them. You know, I know people are very busy. I know you're busy, so I really, really appreciate the fact that you set aside time to speak with them about the festival, and also just answer questions and encourage them, you know, because they need encouragement. We have a lot of makers that are not so confident in themselves. So sometimes they need some encouragement.
Yeah, and it feels good. It's part of my job personally to do that. You know, I speak to people randomly sometimes about this stuff, even if I'm just going out running an errand and stopping at a coffee shop or something. Because you never know. You never know who you're influencing with that. And that's important. Thing. That's more important than anything else, really, quite honestly. So
I agree with that. I agree.
All right. It's important. Say goodbye to our list. Oh, wait. Before we do that, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram. It's _Sholes, SHOLES. On Instagram, so that might be the best way to reach out to me. I don't post that often, but I do check messages. And you can check out our website, youareforafrica.com, and publicartafrica.org for the youth organization, in case anyone wants to work with some kids.
And you are for Africa is spelled U, the letter U.
Mm-hmm. The letter R. Yeah, the number 4, and then africa.com.
Yeah,
and then
that's
Public
kind
Art
of important
Africa
to say that.
Yeah. And then Public Art Africa is just Public Art Africa.
Right. If you can't spell that, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll put links to that in the notes as well. I just, you know, for people who don't go down to look at the notes for whatever reason, maybe they're driving, maybe they're doing laundry or something. I just wanted you to shout that out for everybody. And speaking of shout outs, why don't you say give give a shout out to one special person that you want to give a shout out here tonight.
One special someone. Oh, I'll do Mrs. Ajayi. My mom.
Aww.
She's pretty amazing, that lady. And she understands the dream. And she gets it. She gets it. So I appreciate her.
I appreciate her too, because you're here because of her.
Yeah, thanks. I'll tell her you said so. I'll tell her you said so.
All right. Okay, so now say goodbye to our listeners.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.